All right, so here we are inside of 3D Studio Max. We have our sword built. We have the two parts to it still, this part and this part. We just need to add them together. This has a lot more subdivisions, but in this day and age, it's okay to have that many. We could cut back and get more polygonal stuff, but it's not a big deal. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click and we're going to convert this to editable poly because we still have that weighted normal on it. So I'm going to grab that. And then I'm just going to go over to my editable poly and say attach and attach it. So now I've got my sword and my object, or my handle, as one piece, or one object. But they're still separate pieces, just so you understand, separate pieces. Okay, that said, let's go ahead and unwrap it. So I'm going to do a simple unwrap on this. There's lots of ways you could do this. There's many different opinions and ideas about how people do this. I'm just going to do it the way that I would do it for this class and for this need. So here we go. So here's the sword. I'm going to push F2 to get out of that mode. And that's what I've selected for the sword, right? Well, the sword's the easiest of them to do. For them, I'm just going to grab everything actually and move it over. Then I'm going to come over to here and click on by element, which is like by these two are separate elements. So with that done, I'm going to come and click on mapping, flat mapping, and then just say normalize clusters. And you'll see what we get are two sides of the blade. We have one side here, and then the other side, oops, here. One of the things I did notice is that I left this base on here, and if we change this to be transparent and deselect, you can see that that base is still there. We don't need that extra polygon. So what I'm going to do is show you a trick that people may or may not know, that if I'm in a sub-object of any other modifier, I can collapse this down, collapse this down to a new version, so like editable poly, and then come back to that same sub-object. In the last case it was polygon, so if I grab polygon, you'll see that that is still selected. So I have the ability to go into UV unwrap or unwrap UVW and then select what I want, collapse it into editable poly, delete that by going to the poly mode and saying delete. So since I don't need those, I might as well get rid of them, extra things to plan for or think about. Now that I have that cut out, now that I have everything I need into the sword, I'll just say unwrap UVW again and say open editor, and we'll go right back to where we were. Okay, so right now we have two blades. So if I look at these two blades, probably the first thing I'm going to do, if I need them to be different, if I don't want them to be mirrored, then I can do a couple things. I can flip it like this. I can come up here and just push this flip button and do it twice so it flips 100%, because that way I can get them even closer. They're a lot tighter at this point, so now I have these two set, and I'm going to move them out of the way. This is kind of my method in a lot of ways. I'll grab things and then move them out of the way, and grab things and move them out of the way. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to grab that handle. We're going to see what we get when we just do something as simple as flatten the mapping and do this. And we'll see that's way too little. That's obviously not what we want. So let's go back to our flatten mapping again and change it to like 80 degrees. So it's almost a full corner, and then we get something a little bit more standard, maybe. I'm not really crazy about this either, so what I'm going to do, and I like to move things out of the center area, because whenever I do my lightning bolt, it puts it right here in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try something different. I'm going to come up here, grab this, get it out of the way. Well, yeah, I might as well say grab this, go to the element mode in this version and move it over here, and then everything else is pretty much just a cylinder, right? So if I take a look at the actual wireframe on this, I can go back to front real quick and find a nice clean place to cut it. I'm going to grab this edge right here, right there, which is, I went to 2, so I pushed 2 to go to edge mode, and then I'll grab this edge and double click it, and you'll see it goes all the way around. What I'm going to do before I do that, before I do anything else, is first I'll turn off this ignore back facing, so I can deselect by pushing Alt everything but that UV right there, or that edge I mean. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom, just like that. Simple, easy. Take a look at this. Don't forget we have that cut there. Probably just take that all the way over, so it takes a cut straight down the middle. And then what I'm going to try and do is flatten this out like a pancake or like a skin. And really what I want to take this off to, and maybe that one. There. Okay. So to do that, there's a few ways to do this, but the way we're going to do it is we're going to change what we have selected to what's called a seam. That seam will allow us to use this wrap button and try and lay it out as flat as possible. So I'll click on this button, it changes my selection, the edge I selected, to a seam, bam. Now it's a seam and it's blue, right? There's a whole different thing. Then if I come down here, I think actually what I need to do front is select everything, just like this in edge mode, and then click on this button right here. And it looks like it did something, but what it did is this weird giant thing. Totally fine. I'm just gonna grab this, click on, right click and go to pack UVs, just pack it down. So it brings it back to the scale it needs to be at. And let's take a closer look at what it did. I'm gonna turn off the grid in the background for now. So what it did is it took all of these, like, okay, let me turn off this, sorry. I'll take all of these, and what is that? That's the top. Okay, so we know how to fix that, right? All we have to do is go to the edge mode or polygon mode. And actually, I think there's a trick I saw that actually works here too. I'm gonna grab that and then control and select this, and it does. It selects that whole polygon that's connected to those verts. So I'm gonna say plus to get it just to be to that, and actually I'm gonna say one more plus because I want it to go over that lip a little bit too. So there we go. So I've got that set. Now what? Now I do that magical quick planar map or the lightning bolt, and if I want to do this correctly, to force it to be correctly, I would just change it to be vertical. In this case, it looks like it's okay, but if I did need to change it, I would change it right here. And you can see what it did. It just made it straight up and down. This is the direction it's going to unwrap the whole thing. And if I push that button, bam, now I'm free of there. Now if I take a look at this, you see we've got the whole piece unwrapped cleanly. Now, what I can do is test and see how it looks. Let me get out of wireframe or transparent mode here. Test and see how it looks with a checker pattern on it. So I'm going to go check the checker pattern and see what it looks like. It looks like it's not perfect by any means. Let's take a look at this, and it looks like every green edge you see here, by the way, is going to be technically a open edge. So wherever you see green, it means it's an open edge. So really, if we think about it, probably we could grab this edge here, and that would be there. So maybe the best ones to grab would be these, because, let me degrab this grab, ungrab this one. There we go. I want to get this off of there because, you know, that's going to be something I'm going to unwrap separately. So really quick, I'll just leave it on Z and do this. And you see it's another cylinder or another circle like that. Perfect. Okay, so that one's fine. We'll leave that out of the way. Looking back at this one, I'm going to see what happens when I relax it. Now, like I told you before, there's relax buttons over here. I just like using my old school one. It just seems to always give me the results I want, and I can just leave it up wherever I need it to be. So I'll say start relax and see what I get. And cleaned it up okay, but still it looks like it's fighting with the length. Oh, actually it looks like it did this. Not crazy about that. So I'm going to undo it and take a look. And one of the things you'll see is that sometimes these UVs don't line up until you move them. So really, it looks the biggest problem with this is too wide, this is too long, too long, too long, too wide. So let's just separate some of these out and make it really simple on ourselves. So I'm going to grab right here, go back to front, Z, zoom in. I'm going to grab all of this right here. And so, looks like I missed some. There we go. So I've got the whole bottom pommel selected. Yep. And then I'm going to say break. And what break does is that these are all attached. Wherever you see white edges, it means they're attached. What break does is it will make them separate. So now I've got this as a separate object. I'll do the same thing with the one up here. Go back to front. Easier grab that way sometimes. And it's over. And honestly, a lot of times I have this stuff on another screen. I just don't have the other screen because I can't record all at once. So I'm going to grab this, like that. Make sure I grab all of the stuff I want here, which looks like I totally messed up there. And let's do F2. Sometimes it's easier to see what you have and haven't grabbed by pushing F2. Okay, so I'll go back to front, Z, there we go. So I have that. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to break and make sure. Actually, let me look at this. It looks like there's some, maybe not. Okay, overlap. So there isn't. So I'm going to say roll, or I'm going to say break. Move this one off. Okay, for now. Now I have this. This is all. Let's see what happens when we relax this one. It's a little bit better. Let's see what it did to this. Right now it doesn't look like it did anything, but as soon as I move it, it should change it a little bit. It didn't change it too much, you know, and that may be enough. For our needs, for our perfection, that may be enough. What you could do is you could break them into things. So what it's trying to do is trying to flatten from here to here, which makes it distort, right? You can't really get this to be flat in a real way. So you could separate this out, and sometimes it's easier to do that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna break out the gaps between the metal bands, which is what I picture these are as metal bands, and this is like leather or wood or something. So what we'll do real quick is we'll just come and grab all of this in a row here, like that. And we'll see, we'll do some checking to make sure it's all set, and maybe, it's a little bit hard with this anyway, right? I'll just do one more. Yeah, I'm gonna do plus on this so I can just do it here. Or I could do it over here. Okay, maybe because I grabbed it over here. And then I'm gonna do the same thing here. I'm just gonna try and go to front. I'm gonna move this out of the way for right now, just to kind of get it over there. So I wanna just use this area to select, and I'm gonna grab that one. Again, pushing F2 will let me know what I've grabbed, if there's any extra non-wanted ones. I'm gonna go back F and zoom back in real quick. And then I'll just click here and go up. And then I will click here and go up. I'm gonna take a look, that one looks good. And so we have more or less, I had to clean up a little bit, but we have more or less, everything's now selected. If we take a look at this from the front, you can see that it's all selected. Everything that's gonna be wood in this case is selected. And what we're trying to do is open up these pieces. Now we could do this all easily, but really there's things that need to be a little bit more stretched than others. If we turn this back off, we can see that this is probably long or whatever. So, you know, you can go back and forth with this, but the great thing about the way we do stuff now is that stretching in the UVs here is cleaned up in the UVs in the editor. So I could break this apart and then restitch it back together and fix things like that. So I'm gonna do that so I can show you how it works, but that's not necessarily the best way to resolve this in this case, especially with the way that UVs are. Now, actually no. What I'm gonna do is make my life easier. I know I went through all that for selecting, but it's good. And back to 1. And Max is being stupid. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll collapse the inevitable poly, put on the UV unwrap, and then open it again. Did not like that I said no, and I went back to here and see if I will grab it. Yes, now grab some. Just being Max, by the way, get used to that stuff. Max and any 3D programs, I'm not blaming just Max. Okay, so let me put this back on so I can see my checker a little bit more. And then what I'll do is I'll just pull it out a little bit, so I get a little bit more there. Maybe I could come to the middle here. I can just grab a few areas and just pull them a little bit, so a little bit tighter. Again, everything doesn't have to be perfect. Thank you to the newest way that we do our texturing, but obviously you want to take your time and do it all, you know, close. So I'm going to grab all the way to here and pull it out just a little bit. I know I just sound like I was Canadian. Oat. And then grab it here, probably the middle, and just pull it out a little bit. Just maybe give it back a little bit, you know. And then maybe grab this one. And we'll go through. Sometimes it's easier to see this way. Pull it out a little bit, so yeah. So I'll take this and I'll pull it out a little bit and get that a little bit more square. Again, we could fight with restitching and unstitching, restitching and unstitching, but how much are you going to get back and how much time do you spend doing it is the big question. Keeping these as one object is one of the better things you want to do anyway. Now I'm scaling it instead of moving it. So they look pretty good. If I turn this off, they're not bad. They're, you know, this is a little tight in here, and really you should come in here and tighten this up. Little things to make your life a little bit better and make things look a little bit better. We'll just grab these and say, pull it out. I'll come back to this. I know, I'm gonna tweak until I go insane, but hence is our job. Okay, so I've got this. This is the handle, all set. This is the top and bottom pieces. Now here's the problem with this one, is this just wants to be a circle, this or sphere or circle like a cap. And this does too, so how much do we really want to fight with this? Well, let's take a look what happens if we push relax, and we put this back down here, and I say relax. And then I let go, you can see what it does, okay? So it's up to you if you want to fight with this. I'm just of the indifference to just say, okay, let's just pull this out a little bit to get this scaled, because it's going to be even across. And maybe if I really want, I could turn this back on and maybe turn this on and say, let me scale this to there. And then I'll take this edge mode right here, and I'll just double click on this edge and do something like that so it's straight. And I'll double click on this edge and I'll do something like that so it's straight. And then I'll, I don't really need to, but I can move this up. Take a look. Here's the thing, sometimes it doesn't adjust until you move it. There we go. So, it's better. It's close, it's not perfect. That's again, the thing about working in Painter and the other programs we're going to use is that it allows us to have a little bit of freedom with perfection and UVs. Now you don't want to go crazy because there's only so much you can fix with it, but you definitely want to keep yourself from redoing a bunch of stuff for no reason. I'm not even going to fight with a curve on this one. I'm just going to say fine. Okay, so there you go. I've got all those pieces set up. Now the next thing you're going to do is a couple of things. I'm going to try and find the quickest, and I could make this map twice as big so I have bigger for the blade, and we can do that at another point, but since it's your first time, all I'm going to do is rotate these like this so they have these diagonals. Actually, you know what? Nah, let's just leave them the way they are. Let's see what happens if we grab everything and just do our lovely pack UVs, this. I don't want to rotate, I want to keep it the way it is and fill holes. Let's see what it does. Now, I don't like it when these are separate because that gives me a little bit more breathing room on the 3D. So I'm going to grab this one and move it over here next to it. Then I'm going to grab these. I like to keep things that are similar to each other together. Now, I don't know what this is, but apparently I have a bad, it's the tip of my thing there. Now we need to decide if we like this. I would think we can get more out of it if we turn this diagonal like I was talking about earlier. This just means we have to mess with our texture set inside of the material or inside of Painter, but that's fine. And then like this, so I get a little bit more room out of it. Then I'm going to move this out of the way for right now. And the easiest way to do that is just to say U1, and it moves it 100% over, and then when I want it back I'll say U-1. So I'm going to right click again, say paste or pack UVs and say OK and see what we get. Now one of the things we should look at here is this is the wood, and the wood grain needs to go from right to left, so I probably want to turn this. Well, so I've got that right to left. This is steel, and when it's polished and stuff it's going to go right to left, so really I want that turned. And, while we're at it, we should do that one too. So, do I need to redo it? Yeah, real quick. So, I'll say File, Tools, I'm sorry, my brain is working sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so I'll come back in here and I'll say Pack UVs, and bam. Okay, so I get that. Now, what about my poor sword, the blade? Well, if I come in and I move these all -1, and then I grab this one and say -1 because it's not actually in space, it's just how much it's going to move it, so there we go. Now I can start looking at how I want to place these things compared to each other. We already know that this is denser than that is, but that's because the blade is the biggest piece. There's a couple ways you could fix that. One way is doing what I'm doing right now, and just kind of placing it. And I want to keep it straight, and I know this leaves gaps, and there's people who will say 100% and all this stuff. But we want to get as much of this in here as possible with as much resolution on the important parts especially as possible, like the blades. So I'm going to come back in here, grab this, and then I'm going to say this one can probably actually let's take this one, which won't be seen as much as this one. Put this up here. Pull it out as far as we can, and we'll pull this down. there. This is our spike. That's super important, so we'll put it right there. Then I think we're still missing the tip here. So I'm going to grab that one and just move it over there. So now if I look at my object, I can see that the density is really, really close. This one and this one are really close together. This one's a little bit too big still, so we'll just grab this one and pull it back. Or meaning that the checkers are smaller, it means it's got more texture space than the other pieces. This stuff in the middle looks pretty close, but we could even shrink this down just a tad bit, like that. There we go. Now we do have the most density, or we do have everything laid out as even as possible, and we are set to go. And now I will show you what we do next.